The purpose of these lessons is to show you the logic behind the most basic Chinese characters, beginning with the simplest pictograms, and later combining these elements to create more complex characters. Today's lesson includes 6 characters, all of which refer in some way to the temple where the ruler's ancestors were worshipped. Our first character is the oracle bone pictogram of the open space in front of that ancestral shrine. Food and wine offerings were prepared in this large open area before being presented to the spirits. Once the ancestor spirits had partaken of the offerings, the food could then be divided up among the living descendants. This character, in both its original and present form, are pronounced third tone, xiang, xiang. Aside from placating the gods and ancestors, these offerings were made in the hopes of receiving divine blessings. So the meaning of xiang is to enjoy some benefit, right, or prestige. My first example is this sentence. 你也享有好的人生. You are also enjoying the good life. 享有 here means to enjoy the possession of something. The second character in today's lesson is that same ancestral temple with the food offerings replaced by an opening, a window, indicating that this temple has a height of at least 2 stories, probably something quite unusual at the time. This character is pronounced first tone, gao, gao, and means tall or high, physically or metaphorically. Some examples include 高手, an ace, master or expert at something, such as in this description, 一个一流的电玩高手, a top-rated gamer. 高中 is the abbreviated expression for senior high school, and with the addition of 生, we have the name for high school student, 高中生. Notice 3 first tones, 高中生. A bright and excellent student at any level of schooling is called a 高材生. 高个子 refers to an especially tall person, as does 高大, which can combine into one expression. 你个子高大的哥哥, your giant of a brother, your big tall brother. A useful 4-character expression to say a person is seemingly far removed from the masses and reality, aloof, and possibly condescending. 高高在上, literally, high, high above all this. This next example is a very useful sentence pattern for making negative comparisons with 没有. 你没有我高, literally, you don't have my tallness. Or, in better English, you're not as tall as I am. So, let's look at some more examples of how this negative structure is used. 他没有她闲. He has less free time than she does. 他没有她早. He's not as early as she is. 他没有她需要. He needs it less than she does. 他没有她有名. He's not as well known as she is. 他没有她努力. He didn't work as hard as she did. The third character in today's lesson is that same ancestral temple, but this time with a person in it or on top of it, looking out into the distance. This ideogram means clear and bright, with nothing obstructing the view. It's pronounced fourth tone, 亮, 亮. Notice that the characters 日 for sun and 月 for moon are not used alone to indicate those heavenly bodies. They are more commonly used to say a number of days or months, such as 3月10日, March 10th. When referring to the moon in the sky, the Chinese say 月亮 with unstressed 亮, literally the moon of brightness, not the moon of time. To translate the moon in the sky is so round and white, we could say 天上的月亮又圆又白. To say it's daylight, the Chinese say 天亮了, the sky has brightened. And to complain about your friend overstaying his welcome until dawn the next day, you could say 天亮了他才回家的. Note the use of 才 to indicate later than expected, and 的 as one half of the 是的pattern for emphasis and past action. In lesson 19, we found the expression 闪闪的星星 for twinkling stars. Well, now we can also say 闪亮的星星 for bright, shining stars. Another expression is 亮相, originally referring to performers striking a pose on stage for their audience. Its extended meaning is to make one's debut, or to make a first appearance, as in this example, 日本家电在10月亮相. The latest Japanese household appliances will make their debut in October. Moving on to our fourth character. This pictogram represents an ancient sentry tower, and later an inn for wayfarers or travelers, a place to eat and sleep before continuing on their journey. Pronounce second tone, 停, 停. It's a phono-semantic character with 丁 as the phonetic element, and also alludes to the idea of something tall and firmly fixed in place, such as a nail. Nowadays, however, 停 refers to rather smallish structures, often round or hexagonal, that might appear in a public park or even a street-side kiosk selling tickets or newspapers. They generally do not have walls. The most recognizable example is a public telephone booth, 电话亭. A phone booth may have walls, but they're transparent. Much more useful is the verb associated with 停, so our next character adds the person radical to emphasize the idea of a sentry in the tower calling out halt. Now it simply means to stop or cease any activity, which can be extended to include mooring a boat or parking a vehicle. This character is also pronounced second tone, 停, 停, which you will find on every red octagonal-shaped stop sign. An easily understood sentence is 雨停了, the rain has stopped, with the change of situation particle 了. Other easy phrases are 停电, a blackout or power cut, and 停水, when the water supply is cut off. 完全停止 is the phrase meaning to cease completely. If you happen to be traveling, 停 is useful for saying you stopped off at a certain place. For example, 我们在泰国停了4天. We stopped off in Thailand for 4 days. Another way to say non-stop, besides 一直 in lesson 8, is 不停的. So, 不停的尖叫 means non-stop screaming. And a good way to say stop dead in your tracks is 停止不动, as in 他停止不动, 不能下手. He stopped in his tracks. He couldn't go through with it. Next, I have arranged the characters in today's lesson in their possible order of sense development. Whether exact or not is unimportant. What's important is that you remember the logic behind them. The final character in today's lesson is a modern one, apparently created in the 1940s based on the northern Beijing dialect, which then spread to the other provinces. This character is composed of the hand radical and gao from today's lesson. It's pronounced third tone, gao, gao, and is very common in speech because, somewhat like dong, it can replace many different verbs. One expression is 搞定, meaning decided, settled. 时间已搞定了. The time has already been agreed upon. Another expression is 搞完, meaning to finish, albeit with some difficulty. 需要5天才搞完的. It took 5 days before it was finally finished. To do something well or make a good job of something is 搞好. The negative 搞不好 is even more useful in conversation because it means it's possible, maybe, it just might happen that, etc. My guess is that this expression started out as a negative supposition, along the lines of, this is unlikely to turn out well if, or I expect a bad outcome if. Here are 2 examples tending toward this pessimistic outcome. 搞不好要下雨. It might rain and ruin our plans. Here's another. 你的信搞不好她没有寄. She may not have mailed your letter. And that's why the intended recipient is upset that you haven't responded. And later, again this is conjecture on my part, 搞不好 was extended to optimistic outcomes. For example, 搞不好你也可以加入. You might be allowed to join. You just might get lucky. Either way, 搞不好 is a useful expression in conversation. Here is our color chart with today's 6 characters. 想, 高, 亮, 停, 停, and 搞. So, what's the takeaway from today's lesson? 1. The area in front of the ruling family's ancestral temple is where offerings to the gods and ancestors were placed. If the spirits were pleased, the living descendants could expect to receive some benefit, or at least peace of mind. This is the double meaning of 想, making offerings to the gods and receiving blessings in return. 2. The ancestral shrine was built on a packed mound of earth, higher than its surroundings. And if it contained a window, it was at least 2 stories tall. 高, meaning high or tall, physically or figuratively. 3. A person looking out from this tall structure could see far into the distance, giving the character 亮 its meaning of clear and bright. This character is part of the name for the moon, 月亮, to distinguish it from the single character 月, meaning month. 4. 亮相 originally meant performers striking a pose on stage for their audience. Its extended meaning is to make one's debut, or make a first appearance. 5. An ancient sentry tower was called a ting, also based on the pictogram for a temple or other tall structures such as a city gate or city walls. This character later referred to places where travelers could stop and rest, protected from the elements. Today, a ting usually is an open structure without walls, such as a kiosk or stall selling tickets or books and newspapers. 6. With the addition of the person radical, we see the sentry ordering an approaching stranger to halt. From this comes the meaning to halt, to stop, to cease all activity. It can also mean to moor a boat or park a vehicle. 7. A modern character invented in the 1940s and based on the phonetic gao is gao, a colloquial verb that enters into many phrases such as gao ding, gao wan, and gao bu hao. 8. Gao bu hao is an especially useful expression meaning perhaps, maybe, might, or could. Now you will find a short quiz on double, triple character, and longer expressions. Answer using only the characters learned so far. Thank you for watching and listening.